Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. I am he, your sensei, your griot, your shamanic storyteller, here to tell you a story. And this is a program not suggested for the snowflake, for the folk who are insecure with their self-worth, who don't know who they are, right? Now, I've placed here, this is not for children, but, and that is because from birth to about 6, children are like a sponge, and their minds are pure and clear, and they shouldn't be put through dirty water, and they shouldn't be filtered through garbage, right? And not saying that this is, but just in a germane kind of way, children should be protected, right? And so if parents just let their children see anything, you're not being too good of a parent, right? And conversely, the parent should not be the filthy water that the children are drinking, should not be that nasty dish rag of a filter. And parents should be open and conscious and lead by example as being a loving, pure person. So when I say this show is not for a child, I'm saying that this should be watched by people who have an open mind, who can make up and see things for themselves and not have blinders on, right? And a good example of, I want you to look at this, right? This is Max Igon.
It's really good to see this level of pushback happening. It's just good to see people around the world standing up for themselves. Enough is enough, and that's mainly what it's about. People have had enough. They've just had enough. It's amazing it's gone on for this long. I mean, nearly 2 years, or pretty well 2 years now. It's it's the beginning of February. It's about when they declared it. I think it was March they declared the pandemic. 2 years to flatten the curve, folks. 2 years. 2 weeks to flatten the curve has gone from mandatory vaccines, not just one, but four in Australia, vaccine passports, and all this stuff that's rolling out underneath. See, that's the thing as well. This stuff that's rolling out underneath, all this whole AI smart grid is still rolling out underneath while people are worried about, while people are focused on the truck blockade and things like this, the truck convoy. All of this smart tech still rolling out. The QR codes are still staying in place. So even if they were to fake some sort of a war with China, or say there was something like that going on, all of this smart tech is still in place. When they distract you and get you to look somewhere else, because people have got the attention span of a fly, when they distract you and get the population to look somewhere else, all this other stuff still stays there. All of this smart tech still stays there. All of these things are still in place. So they're going to try to get you sort of focused on that. And the whole shutdown of the power grid, like if Cyber Polygon comes online and they shut down the grid, it won't be for them. It'll only be an apparent shutdown of the grid. It'll shut down for you. It'll shut down for everybody else. But it won't shut down for them. They'll have their emergency backup systems in place. All the stuff that they say, because government is so important, we need our emergency backup systems so we can maintain governance. In other words, so the psychopaths never lose power.
COG, COG, continuation of government.
Because you're not capable of doing it yourselves. You need us to look after
Go to Dark Journalism and see what he has to say about that.
Yeah. So if they do something like this, I mean, they may well blame China. It'd be perfect. See, what they've done as well, and you've got to understand, like I said, it isn't China doing it. It isn't Russia doing it. It isn't even the Jews doing it. It's the system itself. The system runs itself now. It might have been put in place by all sorts of nefarious people, but now it runs itself according to the economic model. Because even if you were to take down all the heads of everything, take down all the Jews, all the Jesuits, all the Freemasons, all these people, you've still got companies that are producing tech, and they're motivated to do so by the dollar signs, by the amount of profit they're going to make from this technology. That's what drives it now. People's greed. That's how the AI gets to take over everything. But the thing is, when they shut down the supply chain, like as soon as Trump closed the borders in the United States near the beginning of 2020, I said, here it is. They're going to shut down the supply chain. They're going to destroy the supply chain. And they're doing this in preparation, of course, for the new supply chain, which is China's One Belt, One Road system that I've talked to you about ad nauseum. A year or two ago, I was talking about One Belt, One Road. So they'll be able to bring that in under cover of all this, just to save us. Oh, look, your supply chain is broken down because of your incompetent Western governments. China and Russia will come to the rescue with One Belt, One Road, and we can supply you with all your needs. Which is, of course, what they wanted to do, because China and Russia are run by the same company that runs the United States and everywhere. It's all BlackRock and Vanguard, And it's all leading to this AI system. Yeah. It's crazy. But everyone just keep blame the Jews. Got to blame the Jews. Blame the Jews for everything. They're put there for you to blame, of course, because the people doing it, the Khazar Jews doing it, the Zionists, don't give a shit about the Jews. They don't give a shit about the Jews or Israel or anything else. All they care about is if you've got someone to focus on to hate. If you don't want to focus on them, well, okay, focus on all the Freemasons and hate them. Or if you don't want to do that, we'll focus on the Jesuits and hate them. Don't ever focus on you being the solution. Don't ever focus on not complying with your own slavery. Putting down all your differences with people. All these different belief systems. I mean, there'll be people out there who blame the Freemasons for everything, and who blame the Jews for everything, or who blame the Jesuits for everything, who will just say, Max is he's a gatekeeper. He's just covering up. He's an apologist for these people. No, I'm not. They're all very evil organizations, but not everybody within them. And it doesn't matter. You can point your finger at these people all you want, but if you're still complying with your own slavery and you're still creating division amongst the people that are also trying to fight this system, then you're part of the problem. You're doing exactly what they want you to do. You're pointing the finger at someone externally to yourself and blaming them for all of the times in your life that you haven't taken responsibility for yourself. And we've been trained to do this, all of us. And that's what this is. It's a time of opportunity for us to take responsibility for this situation. Because ultimately, we're the ones who brought it about. And, sure, we've been programmed, we've been trained to do it. It hasn't been our fault. Things are just the way they are because this is the way people are brought up. This is the way they're programmed. It's the way they're educated. You can't blame them. And that's true to a great extent. But people have had 2 years now. 2 years to see this. And it's easy to not do it, not go along with it. I mean, for me, it's been 2 years. I haven't had a jab. I haven't worn a mask. I haven't complied with anything. I mean, I had to leave Australia, admittedly. But I only did that, like I said, intuitively. And with all the false flag stuff they're trying to do now, like I said, they really need to stage some sort of a false flag event and cry right-wing extremism in Australia. I'm sure that was the next part of their plan. And I'm certain they were going to use me to do it because I'm the perfect person to do it. I've lived outside the system my whole life, so they can use me as a perfect example why they need to have tabs on everybody. I'm sure that's why they gave me my shooter's license. It makes no sense for them to give me my shooter's license. But it provides a plausible deniability. It provides a plausible scenario, whereas I could have gone and built myself some sort of a makeshift gun and got gunpowder and done all sorts of stuff. I had the ability to do it because I had a license. I had access to all those materials. So I could use it to tighten up all the gun laws even more. And all the people in the movement that I've spoken to, which is like dozens of them in Australia. They could tie them all to me, and it would all be guilt by association. It would be really songs, not really tracks. Something that's just kind of a minute long, or 2 minute long, sort of. And God knows what they're going to do with it. I mean, all the 5G stuff's up and running. All these people have got nanotech in them. Who knows what the next play is going to be? It's going to be pretty damn interesting to watch. Like I've said, the best hope you've got now is being in a safe position whereby you can come out the other side of what's going to unfold in the next 12 to 24 months. As much as they roll things back, and I'd really like to see them open the borders, but with what's going to unfold in the next 12 to 24 months, the best thing you can do is get yourself into a safe position. Someone who obviously knows me. Get yourself into a safe position whereby you can come out the other side of what is coming. Because it's gonna go where it does now. Even if they open the borders and, like I said, there's already so many people who've been jabbed. So it's just gonna go where it's gonna go, irrespective of what we do about it from this point. So we have to come out the other side okay, and we've got to be able to provide a safety net for those people who made it through. I mean, there's a lot of people who've gone through this who haven't taken the jab. If you're someone who's gone through the last 2 years and you haven't taken the jab yet, well, good on you. You're a hero, or hell, I mean, you are. Good on you for standing your ground, but it's not over yet. We've still got a long way to go. Anyway, folks, I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you to all the people. I'm going to start us. Thank you to all the people who sent me so many kind messages, so many kind emails. I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please take very good care. Until that time, in la care. I'll leave you with that song again by I don't even like to use that word, but by a Native American. I don't really like to use that word either, but by a true American. And I think this is a very powerful song. So, yeah, we can share this with everybody. This is a message for everybody at this time. This was done back in 2016. I think people need to hear it now, but I'm going to leave you with it. So take care then, folks. In Lakesh.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise. Rise up,
Wake up, wake up.
we don't have to hide.
Wake up, people. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. I, your sensei, your griot, telling you stories. This beautiful sister is singing the song of empowerment.
With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope.
Ho,
Yeah, have hope. With compassion
Have
as
hope.
my shield and faith down to my marrow. I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow.
narrow, narrow,
Yeah, I
resurrect,
Yes, you can bet.
as you can bet.
We seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence, terror, power we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. Can't take the dread anymore. No, we can't take the dread anymore.
Well, folks, that was a little introduction of about 14 minutes and 44 seconds. And what we're talking about tonight is what is real, The only thing that is real is love's co-creation. Max was describing an ideological, social, political, environmental, passion play, soap opera has been going on for at least 600,000 years, if not a million, right? Every empire that has been here, and you look back to Lemuria and Atlantis and the great makers before then, they all had, issues. The first story that was ever written down was Gilgamesh, right? The story of the king Gilgamesh. And he was a great mind, half God, half man. And people needed him, but were scared of him, right? And so they put him on an island all by himself. And it's the story of the monsters from the id. If you look at Shakespeare's story of this is my mind what play that was, but it's Gilgamesh's story. It'll pop into my mind. But it was then remade into a 1950s film, Forbidden Planet. And the Forbidden Planet is that of the human spirit. We are constantly kept in this mud puppet, and then in the illusion of our consciousness going into our soul. And all our soul is a server, that is what our Akashic record is, right? The true essence of who we are is our spirit. And our spirit is the we in me, the all of us together, right? And so, problem is that we did not expect this coming. And relax with all of that. Yep. Talk about right now. Right now, right? So right now, right? What I am doing right now is living in this minute, in the moment, in every day, in every way, taking the piece of the earth and making it stronger. In the moment, not in the past, not in the future, but right here, right? And that's what matters, right here. What you're doing right here, who you're talking to right here. I'm talking to you, right? And I'm bringing my heart song to you, right? And all of the tragedies, all the misery, we don't need to focus on that. That which has come from the past is memory. And what is best of memory is not the sorrow, but the joy. The memory that's focused on what we did that brought joy. What there is, happiness and kindness, and that comes from empathy. And there's pleasure, which is connected to our needs, and consumption. And I had a very consumptive life. Between 2004 and 2014, I worked for the desperate lawyers in the corporate world, and I got paid extraordinarily well, and I lived a hedonist life. And as a meat puppet, I have to say that I do not regret a moment of it, because the lesson I learned was I don't need that. It caused me to die in a plate of spaghetti, but, my mentors and teachers basically said, hey, very good. That's a good lesson. Do you remember that one? Can you not do that again? And I can, right? So I lost 200 pounds, right? I still have all the things wrong with me, but I'm heading back, and I am basically in a place where I am, healthy. And what it is that I'm in the flow, right? I have the ease of homeostasis, right? And that's when your body's in balance, right? Like here, right? And what is dis-ease is when your body does this, And how does that? It's because you get addicted. I need coffee. I need sugar. I need, and that's the seesaw back and forth. When you're just in a nice ease, you eat four little small meals every day. It doesn't matter what you eat, as long as it's not the same thing over and over again. Our bodies do need to consume. When we're experiencing this physical sandbox that we're here to learn, right? So, sorrow and joy, right? And joy, what is true joy? But the happiness of making others happy. That's the true joy of life, right? And the sorrow is that sense of the hole inside of us that needs to be filled. I need to fill it. And that's, that is a lesson that you need to learn, not to repeat over and over and over and over. Freud said, when you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, that is insanity, right? And our culture is based on that, right? That is one of the key components of control. And the thing is, do we want to be controlled? Now, I basically, I'm not, I navigate. I'm not about control. I navigate because, from my experiences, I came from a very controlling parents. My grandmother was unconditionally loving, right? My parents' community was father, Air Force colonel who blew up the world, dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, and then went to work for, LeMay in Strategic Air Command, to blow up the whole friggin' world, just for profit, really. But that has happened before, right? Like I said, if you go back and look up Lemuria and Atlantis, but we still are here. We keep doing this same mistake over and over and over. You think we're going to learn. But if you stay in the moment and stay focused on joy, which is love's co-creation, and the physical element of that joy is happiness, and the physical manifestation of that happiness is making others happy, realizing that your life is not about you, it's about the we and me, And that came from, I was born and died at birth, but a guardian angel came in and saved me, Dr. Black, right? And that has been my life. I am like the Forrest Gump of love's co-creation. I'm always right there to learn that lesson. And I've died 7 times, and I'm not dead yet. Like Magic Max in The Princess Bride said, oh, well, he's almost dead, not quite dead, almost dead, not all the way dead, just, so, and that has been me 7 times, and I'm pretty much, yes, I have 2, so I have got 2 just in case, right? Because after this death of dying in a plate of spaghetti, after 10 years of uber hedonism to where I gained 200 pounds. But that's like, I was telling a friend about when I met Meatloaf. Meatloaf just died a week or 2 ago, right? Now that guy, I met him in the 70s, right? And you'd think he'd be dead way before then because he was a big guy, right? And you saw he was in the movie Fight Club, right? And he was the biggest guy in the Fight Club. You thought he died in that movie, but you thought making the movie was going to kill him. But the bottom line of we're not going until it's our time. Someone asked Jesus, so when's the end of time, Jesus? And he said, not anytime soon. And anyway, it's beyond my payroll, my pay, package. It's, he doesn't know. I don't have no idea. And my experience is that I'm not dying until it's time for me to die. And when it's my time to go, there's nothing stopping it because I've already survived 7 deaths, right? And they were all very good lessons, right? And so I'm almost at my high school weight. I'm down to 210. And I'm not worrying about it. I'm not striving for it. I'm not doing jumping jacks. I'd like to ride on John's little, treadmill, but I just walk around up here. I mean, I have to get up and walk around every 25 minutes, or I start to rust, right? Who gives a shit about Meatloaf? Well, Meatloaf was an interesting guy. You may not give a shit about Meatloaf because you only know Meatloaf as a guy who made a record or two, right? Yeah, I met the real McCoy, and he was way interesting guy. His whole band was way interesting. They were like from the Midwest, and I met them. I was working at I had my gig where I built nightclubs, right? And after I built them, I had, I don't know if you've ever been on an elevator, but they had these little frames right by the place where you push the buttons. And it has a little thing, a card that goes in there. And it says what date and who last inspected the elevator. Because elevators can be pretty dangerous things. It's a box that goes up and comes down, and if the cable breaks, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the elevator. So it should be checked relatively often. Well, basically, nightclubs are the same thing. They're an environment where a lot of people go in. There's a lot of things going on that if something went wrong and people, panicked people are never a healthy group to be among. And so you don't want that to happen. And if it does, you want that exit sign to be still lit. You want that emergency lights to show the way to get out if the lights go off, right? And there's smoke, right? You need a hallway, a fireproof, cinder block steel hallway that has, a vent that take the smoke away from the people trying to get out, right? So I built a lot of nightclubs. I had a master electrician's license. And I came up with this great idea that because what would happen is you'd have this big nightclub, let's say Studio 54, Xenon's, Danceteria, my club, et al. The Tunnel Club, Kamikazes, Wetlands. These were all the big ones that I helped. I did lighting and the electrics, and especially in the 70s when New York was uber, losing its mind and being unbelievably corrupt. Inspectors would come to these nightclubs, and it was very much like the cabaret. People went to nightclubs to escape the nuttiness of the 70s. And the 70s were quite, you think today is bad? The 70s were way worse. And the 80s were also way worse than this, right? And there were AIDS was quite a nasty disease, and in New York City and San Francisco, it was the center of the pandemic. And people were scared. I took care of a lot of people who had AIDS, being the alternative healer I was, and that I had a lot of friends. I worked in the theater and in the disco world and in the gay entertainment world. And that's a lot of gay people right there, those 3 communities, and a good portion of the people I knew who were homosexuals, and also in the rock and roll world, that's a lot of drugs there. So I probably lost at least 100 people that I knew well, and 50 people who were really close to me who died of AIDS. And in the late 70s, early 80s, people were so scared of AIDS, they thought if you got touched by somebody with AIDS, because they look pretty, people who had AIDS, the way the last year of their life was not a pleasant way to go out. And it took a long time. You got infected, and for 5 years, you didn't even know it. People got infected in, 73 to 80, and they didn't even know they were infected, and they passed it on to lots of people. That's a real nasty virus when you got 8 years of not even knowing the disease exists, And then another, thanks to Anthony Foreskin. I mean, he was, very, you should go check out what Anthony Foreskin had to do with AIDS. He didn't save anybody. He definitely, you go talk to some gay folk about Anthony Foreskin and AIDS. And because there were many cures, there were a lot of things you could do for people who had it. So you could enhance their life and keep it going for longer, so maybe they could find a cure, right? And they didn't. They just wanted those people dead, And so, I mean, that was a disease then. So, so I've seen a lot of death and destruction and suffering and harm, and all through all those times, which were a lot worse than this. Basically, I still had my heart in the right place, and I was always there for people. So I was there administering aid and comfort to people who were really sick. And I knew, because I worked at Johns Hopkins, wiring machines for them, that AIDS was it was a disease of the blood. You had to be exposed to their blood. And the biggest thing that passed on AIDS wasn't intravenous drug use, wasn't homosexual sex. It was the institution of blood sales. They took a lot of blood from infected people, sold it to hospitals, and people who were going in for operations got infected. The mass of the people around the world who got infected were through blood sale. Right? They don't talk about that. And I knew this. I knew this in, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. It wasn't really until the 90s did they get a handle on AIDS. And so it just... So anyway, Meatloaf, right? So this nightclub that I wired, it was in the 20s, between 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue. I don't know what it was, 25th Street or 27th Street or 20-something street, right? And I had a shop and a studio that had big windows that Don and I put our photographs in. And because a lot of people walked up and down, it was right on the corner of 6th Avenue, a lot of people saw our photos there. And it wasn't a photo area, meaning there were a lot of photo entities there, advertising and other entities of so we do it now. So tell me, no, you see, yes, you see, no, I don't always want to hear stories. Let's talk about now, okay? But the memories and stories of the past and the future deal with now. See, because time is not a linear thing. It's like right here, right now. That's time. The Big Bang, and in the good book it says, in the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega, beginning and the end, all right here, right now. So that is why we're here, to learn about what love is. The only thing that's real is love. Love's co-creation. The essence of love is happiness, not pleasure. What is happiness? Your appreciation through empathy of the other. The realization that your life isn't about you, it's about the we and me, right? And when we live in that, that's when we're going to have peace. That's when there will be no disharmony. There will be just the flow, just the ease, just the homeostasis of the experience, right? Right now it's and what does that do? But it's like a pump of power. And the power is irrelevant, right? But the controlling elements just are addicted to that power. Schrodinger's cat. Yep. It's either alive or dead. Yep. and maybe it's alive and dead at the same time. Yep, and that's kind of where it is. And what is being dead? What is dead, and what's alive? Alive is when your essence is vibrating in the frequency of love, and dead is when it's not. Pretty much simple. That's it. Straight up. That's all it is, right? And so all of this, you know, stuff about, all of it is irrelevant, right? So it doesn't matter. Like I said, I've died 7 times. I know what death is. I've been around death, every kind of death, disease, war, crime, you name it. I've been there as a person to help, person to try to facilitate the ease rather than the chaos, right? And that's been my life's experience. Even though, I've been, the person that's been experiencing the oppression of the fear, self-loathing, meaning people like, oh my God, we have to kill him. Well, I've learned not how to get killed like that. That's what did that do? That experience made me a good negotiator, made me a good diplomat, and that's one of my skill sets. I'm not just an electrician, and I'm not just an artist. I'm not just a photographer. I'm not just a journalist. I'm not just an anthropologist. I'm not, I'm all of the above. It's the we in me. So, and that we is all of us that do that which is love's co-creation. That's the we, right? That's all our relations, and not just humans, but everybody, scaled, feathered, furred, skinned, everybody, warm-blooded, cold-blooded, silicate, bacteria, virus. We all are relations. When we are in harmony, we don't get sick. That's what I was a real, I died at birth. I died at 6, died at 10. And, by 10, I kind of got the idea, okay, that's it. I am not doing this again, period. Not doing it. So every other time I'd gone through all of that suffering from, 0 to 10. But in it, 90% of that suffering was the harmony of unconditional love. So I realized, okay, that's important. This is not. This is an illusion. This is what's real. So I don't need to feel this. I'm not going to feel this, no matter what pressure is put upon me to feel this. I am not going to feel it, right? And that's why I inherited my 3 rules of doctor, do no harm. Do not get involved unless you have a workable exit strategy to get the innocents out of harm's way. And don't get involved, the 3rd rule, don't get involved unless there's something you can learn to facilitate making things better, doing your best, being kind, because that makes me happy. So I want to, and to be happy is to be at ease, right? Yep. Yep, exactly. What Lana just said there, One thing you need to know, you were never a mistake. Remember, the antibiotic came from a mistake, right? So there are no mistakes. They're lessons, right? And if you just do the same stupid thing over and over and over and over and over, it's just you haven't learned the lesson, right? And if you want to, incarcerate yourself in that mistake, it's not going to be a very happy life, And we see it all around us, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And in reality, it is not that way. That is just the illusion. And, if you're ready to just let yourself be deluded, self-deluded, and, environmentally deluded, socially deluded, historically deluded, all the above. Yeah. Now, a story is a different thing. You can tell a story. And again, my stories are entertaining, and they bring because I'm agreeing on that entertaining story is there to be the template for you to go, right? So, as I was saying about Meatloaf, he was a big boy, right? And at that time, I was a skinny little guy, not so little anymore. I was about 6 foot, but because I walked around New York City. I did not take buses or subways. I mean, if it was raining or if I had to get someplace relatively quickly, yes. But otherwise, I would walk to wherever I was going because it was good for me. And I was carrying my bag of tools, which usually weighed somewhere between 40 and 70 pounds. And that kept me in pretty good shape, right? And that's why I'm pretty much as old as I am, right? Is because for most of my life, I stayed in pretty good shape. Yes, it was a period that I wanted to experiment with hedonism, and I did. And see, everything in the material illusionary world has a cost, So, yeah, I still have diabetes, still have Charcot legs, still have, aplastic anemia, still have all of these stuff I have, but I put it at ease. So I'm not diseased. Yes, my organs have some been damaged, but they're getting better. And you're not supposed to, when you have diabetic eye and you have, macular degeneration, it's hard to, I mean, they want to do operations and take off lenses and do all kinds of crazy shit in your eyes. Now, I have a number of friends who were blind and they did that too. And now they can see 20/20, right? So that kind of medical dynamic is a pretty good thing for the right thing, but not just for everyone. Whereas my eyes, I had that issue and I had a number of procedures done to it that were designed not to cure it, but to just keep you from going blind and to be a moneymaker. That procedure costs $1,800 a pop. But in America, the only way you can get pretty good health care is either be really rich or have nothing. I mean, have nothing. And then allow yourself to be the guinea pig, right? And so that's what I have done for the last 4 years, 5, what is it, 7 years, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2, 8 years. And it's worked out for me, right? And so all of the procedures that they've done to me, which designed to stick you in a prison and then give them all your money, actually healed me, right? Because I was at ease. So when those procedures were done, instead of just keeping me from going blind, it actually healed the issue, right? Now my eyes aren't 20/20, but they work a lot better than they did. And when I got my eye surgeon doctor, they have all these wild, crazy machines measure everything in my eyes. He goes, this wasn't designed. And he does, if you're going to have a procedure done to you and you're going to have a medicine given to you, the best doctor to have is the guy who invented it. And my eye surgeon is that guy. The procedure I go through, he invented it, right? Pretty well, and I just, by the roulette wheel of fate, got him as my, being the poor guy I am, I was sent to this place and they said, oh, you'll see Dr. B. And so I did. And he's a guy he owns the whole place. He's a rich guy, and he invented, he's a smart guy, invented this procedure and a lot of other. They do pretty amazing things, and they get blind people to see. They're really pretty amazing guys and gals. Anyway, so he, acted like he was God, right? I was just another thing, right? And just before he I said, wait a minute, who are you? What's your name? tell me a little bit about you. And he goes, no one's ever done that. And I said, oh, put up your hand. Because he was about to say, I don't have time for this. I said, put up your hand. And that caught him off guard, and that's why I do it. I read his palm, and I cold clocked him like bang. And his nurse, and the nurses who he was facing me, the door was back behind him, and there were like 4 or 5 of his nurses, surgical nurses, who he's like doing 6 operations at once, and he comes in to do his procedure to me because he's going to make $1,800 just for spending 3 minutes with me, right? And I go, let me read your palm. And I read him, and I like get him to the point where he's almost crying. And his number 1 nurse who was there assisting me, and the other 4 were like kind of giggling or like going like this. And I just like, and he says, I'll be back. So he had to go to his office, calm himself, go do the other 3 or 4 procedures that he had to finish up. Then he came back to me, and we talked and talked and talked and talked. And then he was, okay, we're going to do this procedure. And he like gigantic needle. It's going to jab it. I like Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange, where they had like my head, I couldn't move, and they had these clamps on my eyes. And he's coming at me. He says, no, don't look at the needle. I said, what, you moron? Look at that. It's right there. How can I? And he showed me how not to look at it. So, okay, that's that. And then he does the procedure. He said, we do one eye at a time. And I go, why that? He goes, well, this procedure, 1 in 1,000, you go blind from it. So we don't do both at the same time. Because just in case you're 1 in 1,000, you are, you still have the other eye. So, he tells me this after he's done it, not before, right? And he put the patch over there. They turn off the light. He says, just sit in here and I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And we'll look at your eye. And if it's good, we'll do the other one. And so anyway, he comes back and I'm seeing all kinds of hallucinations in this eyeball. He didn't tell me about that. And then, he turns on the light that's relatively bright because they have a couple of different lights in that room, like really dim, not so dim, lights just on the table so they can see the stuff they're doing on the table. Then the big fluorescent light. So he kind of hits that. He takes the patch off and I can't see anything. He said, you motherfucker. He said, what's wrong? I said, no, I'm fucking blind. He said, oh, I'm bad. I said, what do you mean you're bad? He goes, oh, I should have told you. It takes between 5 minutes and 10 minutes. So I'm going to put the patch back on and come back in another 4 or 5. But, I've already looked in your eye and you're not going to be blind. I said, why don't you tell people this shit? He goes, well, I'm really busy. And so I really gave it to him, right? And I started telling him other stuff about him. And he closes the door and he goes, listen, you have to stop doing this, especially when other people are around. I said, well, motherfucker, don't be such a fucking asshole. And he goes, you use fuck a lot. I said, don't you? He goes, yes, but like in my head and not. I said, well, it's better used appropriately. My grandmother says that using profanity in your mind is worse than out of your mouth, and you should never use it out of your mouth unless it's appropriate, and you are a fucking motherfucker. And he starts laughing hysterically. And he goes, no one's ever talked to me this way. No one's ever said anything like you just said to me. And I just met you. How can you know me? I said, buddy, you don't know me very well. So anyway, he goes off and does what he has to, comes back, and yes, I can see through that eye. And he goes, I'm going to let you, I've already made an appointment. Can you come back? And this was like, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and come back. And the end of the week, it was like Monday, Friday. I said, sure. So I'll come back. And he does the other eye, and I'm already aware of, don't look at the needle, blah, blah, blah. So I got the 411. And we're talking about, don't you think you should be doing? He says, well, I said, you even though the average mud puppet, and he starts laughing about that. And I said, the average mud puppet will take any kind of punishment that authority tells them. I'm not that guy. But still, that doesn't mean that those people aren't terrified. I'm not terrified of what you do to me. I am understanding of all of this, and I've done my homework on this procedure, After they assign me to you and you looked at my eyes and said, "Come back and we'll do the procedure." And you signed me up because I was the poorest guy you've ever seen. I did my homework on what it was. I wasn't going to come back unless I did my homework, which I did. And I found out you were the guy who invented this, So now you're my eye doctor, and that's the guy I want. So anyway, it's been 7 years or so, and now he's my good friend, right? And that's the kind, all of my doctors are my good friends. I've read them all, I've seen who they are. And if I didn't like them, they wouldn't be my doctors. And they need me more than I need them. My critical care doctor, unless it's a real unless it's a 911 moment, he usually has me come in as one of his last patients. So he can talk to me for as long as he wants to talk to me about stuff he wants to talk about, right? Because after I got past that critical thing of my charcoal legs, and I learned, he, said, you got this, and this, and I then went and did research on it and found what it really was and how I could deal with it, and that's how I walk. I mean, he still was like, I can't believe you walk. And I said, when I took care of you, when you were, we were talking about cutting your legs off, we had metal clamps on your legs. You had a walker. We wanted you in an electric wheelchair. And you're walking around without even a cane. How do you do that? You have no clamps on your legs. You have no braces. You have no nothing. How do you do that? So I said, well, it's a part of my dynamic of doing my best through love's co-creation. And I've gotten all these doctors to meditate and to change their whole lifestyle into being a happy person. One of the doctors, he's about to get divorced. And, I got him to look at what his life was and how he treated people, and he changed that. And now he's, had another kid, and he's in his 50s. His wife was in her 40s, They weren't having sex for about 10 years, So this is what life really is in the real world, in the world of love's co-creation, which is the only world there really is. The rest is an illusion, right? Put my glasses so it's not a blur. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Let's see. There's two of you there. Let's see. Yes, it's a good world. Yep. Since everybody does that, just don't hurt people. Yep. Mm-hmm. Some doctors are healers. That's... And, that's why they call it a practice. They're just practicing, I wish for an actual doctor that could actually take the oath for real, like me, doctor do no harm. I never do, I do not get involved if there's harm to be done, right? I do not get involved unless I have a, workable exit strategy, and I go in to get the innocent out of harm's way, and that's what a sick person is. They're innocent, right? It's not their fault. Now, even a guy like me who was, on the Hedonist Express for 10 years and gained 200 and something pounds, and I was already overweight before I got on the Hedonist Express. I was already 260 pounds, and then I added another 240 on that. I was a pretty big boy for a guy who's not even 6 foot tall. I'm 5'11" 3/4. So, that, but see, no one takes an oath. No one's conscious. Some of the most unconscious people I ever met were working in hospitals, especially the administrators. They are totally unconscious. They're just thinking about the Benjamins. You went with the flow. Yep. I always say with the flow. Now, even when I was on the Hedonist Express, I was going on the flow, right? Oh, this is, why do people do this? I want to see why. And I got myself into a circumstance. I worked with people. That's all they did. They had breakfasts at these super fancy restaurants. That was 2,000 calories. And then lunch was like 18,000 calories. And dinner was like another 20,000 calories. And then you add on the bottles of booze and the champagne and the wine, and it's easy to gain 240 pounds in 10 years. And I got rid of 260 of them in 7, without having to, go nuts about it. I just changed everything about what I was doing, right? I got a simpler life, and people, down below, how do you pay your bills? Well, if you don't spend any money, you don't have to worry about paying your bills. There's certain things, I eat a little bit. I put a little gas in my car. There are a few little events that I have to kind of pay for, but normally $400 to $700 gets me through the month, right? And here's a good time to say, hey, if you want to throw anything in my PayPal account, you can. Still my birthday all month long. It's only the 7th. I still have another, how many days are 28? So I still have another 21 days of my birthday left, right? So, and you just, go to PayPal, and when they ask who to, you just say the dude awake 42 at Gmail, the dude awake 42 at Gmail, and it'll get right to me. A lot of people do. There's 4 people who regularly put something in my account every month, and they are great folk. I really love them. Let's see. Let's talk to a friend. Let's reach out and see what we can get. Do 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 do. Ba 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 ba. Whoops. Ba, ba, ba. Here we go. Let's see if our friend answers the phone. Sometimes he does. Most times he doesn't. And he speaks quite interestingly. So, and if he were to speak on the channel, it would be nice. But I don't think he's going to answer it, because usually he answers pretty. If he's going to answer, he answers relatively right then and there. Yep, let's try our this friend.
9702612.
Hey. Whoa. Don't throw that around. Let's see. How indestructible are you? Yeah, not too bad. Nothing broke. Yep. Still hanging in there. Oh, let's see about this guy here. Let's see. Anyway. Come on. Here we go. Here we go. Come on. Okay. Anyway. So, where are we? 4 of you there, 58 minutes. Would you not be? Would you not be? Would you not be? Let's see. There's Lynn. You are light and love and feisty, and feisty is good. Yep. Well, the thing about Lana is she's not only feisty, she's true blue, and you'd want her, getting your back, See, now you don't have to be passive. What you need to be is to be able to navigate. When I was in seminary, and up until I was in seminary, I was, and I still am, naive. I believe in love's co-creation, so I don't, understand why people are mean, cruel, dishonest, cheat, lie, and steal, because there is no upside to any of that, right? The only thing that brings you happiness is being kind to others. That's the only thing that brings happiness, right? Even, Freudenscheider, the amusement of the suffering of others, is not a very good thing to enjoy, right? Because there's this karmic element to being unconscious. So the thing is, you don't have to be a pushover. You just have to navigate, And I learned in the seminary, because I saw things that were just, I couldn't believe. I mean, the seminary I was in, they actually had slavery, right? But everyone who worked there were indentured servants and had been for 8 generations. And most of them were mixed race folk, right? And so they couldn't get out of it. They couldn't buy them. They got such little pay, they couldn't, and there was no union for them. They just were, their children were indentured. They were indentured. It was like, I couldn't believe it. And, in that seminary, they had first form, second form, third form, fourth form. First and second form, we were known as fags. And the third and the fourth form, we had to do what they said. And if they said, drop your pants and let us have sex with you, that was part of the tradition. And, I was watching this go on, and the people who were in the first and second form who were being taken advantage of were the super innocent people. And I got, I got Lana. That's what I got. I got Lana. And again, the universe, the 6 of us who were the most, meaning most of the kids who went to the school had been there. Their fathers had gone there. Their brothers had gone there. Their uncles had gone there. There's a real tradition about this school. And they had 3 class castes. They had those who were going to be priests, like me. And we wore the black casket. That's like the black tea dress. And it's great because you don't have to wear clothes, right? You don't have to get dressed. You just throw this thing on, right? And then there were the guys who were going to be in the military, and they wore uniforms. And the guys who were going to be in the business world, they wore 3-piece suits. And that's what the Catholic Empire wanted. They wanted good Catholic imperial corporate folk, because the Vatican is a corporation. And they wanted good Catholic folk in the military, because that's what the Vatican is. It's a military entity. They pretty much caused most of the wars in the last 1,800 years. And, then there was the business scam of the religion, nonprofit. And it was just mind-boggling. And I came from a place that was my grandmother, Dr. Black, all these other great mentors in my life who were unconditionally loving, who watched my back, never let shit happen. I didn't have to worry about it. I could be that loving little, instrument of flow, of current that I was, And, I got into that flow, harmonic of current by, at 6 months sticking a knife in the electric socket, and and I still am that character, right? So when I was confronted with this unbelievable, and everybody in the whole world said this was fine, Catholic Church. Oh, you're so honored to be, I was going to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. It's like, no, you're going to have, I just kept being told how much power and control and position I was going to have. And I just couldn't, no. I'm not going to watch someone be, treated like a slave just so I can have position. No, I'm not going to watch someone being sexually molested, even though I had no idea what that was, except that wasn't that person over there getting sexually was not a happy, So every time I would see that, I would go to the rescue, and it really it landed me. You know, I just, and the crew I was with, the freshman dorm, it was 5 stories tall. Really, it was like Hogwarts. It was like 100-year-old building, and we didn't have rooms. We had carols, and we had these, hallway and these like little things that 6 guys were in. It had 6 beds, and you had your own armoire and a foot locker, and that was about it. And there were 2 bathrooms at the end of the hallway, and that was it. Right? There was no privacy. And the upperclassmen could come in and just grab you and do whatever the heck they wanted to you. And I remember, I had, I was told I was going to be a football player. And I don't want to be a football player, but they said you are. So okay, until I refused to do it. Right, I refused to do it, and I kept refusing to do things they told me to do. But I had my football, bag and my pads and my helmet, all that stuff. And I saw my friend Igo, about to be raped, and he had no idea what was coming because he had glasses that thick. And he was a little guy. I mean, I was a little guy. I was only 5'4" or 6, and he was like 4'5". And this big guy just was going to pick him up and use him like a sex toy. And the closest thing to me was my football helmet. I just was in my hand, and I just whacked that guy on top of his head. Gave him a concussion. Knocked him out. And for us not to get in trouble, we pushed him over to the staircase and just rolled him down the staircase. And which is really what hurt him. Me whacking him on the head with my football helmet just knocked him out. But falling down 2 staircases of, marble stairs, he wasn't, and he wasn't going to say that, a bunch of small little freshmen did this while he was trying to rape a little boy. So we didn't quite get into trouble, but we started to get a street cred, and we kept doing shit like that. We called it Mission Impossible, was the show we watched on TV. That was the first year of Mission Impossible. And we called ourselves, the crew or the team or Mission the IM Force, right? And so IMF. So, and what can I say? We were like 14, 15, so we didn't know anybody. But we started a friggin' war. One of our friends who had his father gone there, his brothers had gone there, and he didn't want to go there, but they forced him to go there. And he would not be one of, they were called toadies, meaning he wouldn't, if he went along with the tradition, he wouldn't be molested or he wouldn't be treated like a slave. But he said, no, this is wrong. And that's when he explained to me what was going on. I said, what? Because the people working down the kitchen, they're fucking slaves. What? So he and I organized the kitchen because we got punished for not doing things that we were told to do. So we had to work in the kitchen, and we organized them as a union, right? And we got really in trouble for that. And one day we were playing soccer. We knocked the ball up on the senior terrace, and because he was a toady, meaning everyone knew his family was in it, he thought he was safe to go up on the senior door and retrieve the soccer ball. When I was about to go up, he said, no, you don't, I'll go up there. And he went up there, and they grabbed him, and they took him, and they ripped his clothes off, sodomized him, and then used baseball bats on him, and then painted him with lead-based paint, the school colors, and basically took him away and left him in another room that we couldn't get to until later that night. They threw him out on the ground, and he nearly died of skin poisoning. Those boys didn't get in trouble because he should have known better. He's a toady. How could he dare go against And so the freshman class, that was bigger. The senior class was about 40 guys. Freshman class was 160. And we were all being attacked and molested and you name it. And we're supposed to go along with this. It's tradition, And so I said, fuck that. And so we went to the gym. We got baseball bats and clubs and you name whatever you could hit somebody with. We went and we set our watches on and we snuck into the senior dorm and we, outnumbered the seniors and they're going to be asleep. So I said, even though we're smaller, if there's 7 guys around a guy in the bed and we're hitting them with baseball bats and, golf clubs and they're asleep, we should be able to, be victorious. Well, that might have happened if we could have all set our watches to the right time and that we were all not scared to do, being trepidous. So basically what happened when it got around the time, some guys started hitting on their senior faster because they just wanted to hit him and then get out. And so they hit him and then he woke up and threw him out of the way, went into the hallway and pulled the fire alarm. So that woke up everyone and some guys just ran, other guys, started hitting. And at the end of it, about 30 of us freshmen ended up in the hospital and close to $200,000 worth of damage was done, mostly by the seniors themselves, throwing us through windows and things of that nature. And so we got punished. I got really punished. I was the instigator. So, that's, I was experiencing Lana. I was Lanning, and then I realized I can't do this. I have to be smarter. So I told my freshman class and the IMF force, okay, guys, everyone has to quit, right? We have to, we don't have to do what they tell us to do, but we can't, overtly be violent, right? This has to be a peaceful, and, Martin Luther King was doing his thing. So we're trying to be like Martin Luther King. And Jack had just got whacked. And so, we stopped being violent, but not me. I went underground. So there was this one really, really, really sick Jesuit who just really was sick. And he had polio. So I used to sneak into his apartment and cut. That's when I learned how to pick locks, because he had locks. And I picked the lock. I read a book, how to pick locks. I made a set of, the tools you need to pick up tumbler. And I would sneak into his apartment and I would take all his canes and I had a diamond tooth saw and I would cut all the canes. He had all wooden canes and crutches. And I would cut them in half, put a dab of super glue, put them back on. And then I would color the wood to match so he couldn't see the little line where I cut it. And so he would be using his canes or his crutches and he on a flat, and this whole school was made out of marble. And on the flat floor, those cut canes and crutches were fine. But going down a staircase where the stress on the cane is like 40 times more than going on a flat plane where you're just going plop, 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 they would snap. And then he would tumble down the staircase. I did it to him 15 times. I was being Lana. And I wired all of the bells of the school to ring at 3 a.m. for an hour. And then it would shut off. And they never figured out what happened. And the device I used that I made to turn the whole system to, rings. And also the fire horns would go up too. It was a simplex system. And I had worked on simplex systems before as an electrician. And when the guys were putting it in the school, because they built a whole new building, the science building, which I was like one of the main people being a student of, And that was one thing I did. I got F's in everything because the professors, the teachers, the priests who taught were just moron, stupid fucks. And I read those books already, but because I couldn't speak, I would speak very quietly because I couldn't speak any louder than this. So, but that's what got me to speak because, man, I would, when I got really riled up, I would, remember one time I saw something really bad happen in the dining room, and no, everyone was ignoring it, and I just used an outside voice, and everyone kind of went like, he's actually speaking now. So the Simplex guys wired the new science building, and when they did that, they encompassed all of the other buildings that had all different systems in it, and they brought them together in this one place. But to make all those systems work in together, they did a thing to it that you could enter into the system. It wasn't just centrally located. You could enter it almost at any point where there's a wire connecting this point to this point, and put something in the middle, make everything ring. So I was watching them do this. I saw they put this cable in the ground, and they just put an underground cable and put it in pipe or anything. And so I said, okay. And so when they were doing that, I kind of just surreptitiously put a little loop of a wire so that, it had enough to play with, and it was going through the forest, right? So I kind of put a little thing around a branch so I know exactly where it was. So the leaves fell after they did it, and it was the night before a big snowstorm was going to happen. We hadn't had any snow yet, so late at night I went out there, Mission Impossible. There's where the little branch was. That's where the little loop is. I dug a little hole, made a big hole, put the apparatus, which I had put in a watertight box, and I had two little holes drilled on either side that I could clip the wire right in the middle, put the two wires in there, attach them. I designed this whole thing where there were just two attachments on either side. No big, no muss, no fuss. I put a little, what is known as duck seal at the two holes, and then buried the box, put it over, put the leaves over. As I was walking back, the snow started, and it snowed and snowed and snowed until it was a foot of snow. And then it got really cold, and that snow turned out in the forest into ice. So no one was going to find that. And it was a car battery in a box with the electronic device to make the bells ring, right? And the bells rang for 6 months. Even 3 months after my cardinal came to get me out of there so I wouldn't be murdered. It kept ringing, just ringing and ringing and ringing. And they brought the Simplex guys in. They couldn't figure it out because it wasn't as if there was a switch in there. It was just attached to the line of the line, and so it just made everything ring. And they even had guys stay there at 3 a.m. And when the thing started ringing, they thought they could trace it back to where it was, but they couldn't. I designed it so they couldn't trace it, right? And a real interesting story. So I did all this, and then at a certain point, I just drove that guy insane. Well, he was going to kill me. I mean, he tied me up to fire pipes and had the seniors beat me with 2x4s. It broke my ribs, broke my ankle. It's kind of messed up right now. That's where my charcoal leg's worse. And they broke my thumb. And they physically broke it like, And that's when I learned, you can break your thumb, if you ever get handcuffed, because my thumb is in a place where it's, now because of my arthritis, but this thumb, I could put all the way back here, right? They broke the cartilage. And so, I learned about pain. And when you learn about pain, you realize that pain, you can control pain, with meditation and prayer in your mind, right? You can control it. Because, being, beaten, breaking your ribs is one of the more painful things. And I ended up in a hospital, and that priest didn't get in trouble. And the um, you know, and why they beat me was they tried to rape me, and I knew they were going to do it, so I took a bunch of X-Wax and prunes, and so when I pulled my pants down, I covered them in diarrhea. So instead of being sexually, taken advantage of, I basically shit all over them with like hosing them down with diarrhea, and that's why they tied me up like Jesus onto the sprinklers above and beat me 2x4. And luckily, I was high enough where they didn't hit my head because my head was already like a broken melon. But they broke. So the thing that broke were my legs, right? And my ribs. MacGyver. Yep, that's me. So 30 years later, I was at a rainbow gathering, right? And one of the fun things about a rainbow gathering, everyone does so much acid that they don't sleep, and they run around and have a good time. And then you smoke a lot of pot to like mellow out the tripping your brains out. And I was probably 40 something. And so I tell that story. And I'm in a circle around a fire, and there's, people with their guitars, and we're all smoking and drinking and eating yummy things. And that's one of the fun things about Rainbow. It never sleeps. On the 4th of July that week, everyone just parties and meditates, or they used to meditate. I still did meditate. But that was one night that I did stay up all night and went to Nick at Night and watched all the performers and went to different fire pits and listened to people playing songs and trying to be Neil Young and all of that. And there was always a sweet little princess who would want to scratch an itch. And so I'm sitting there, and there's about 10, 15 people in the circle, and there's about 6 guys and 5 women or whatever it was, but it was almost evenly guy girl. And it's I was like in my 40s, maybe even 50s, and everybody was, I was probably the oldest, and I had been around a lot, and I had street cred there. I had had been a scout, had been, a vocalizer, had been a gathering, person who made it happen. I was, a worker in kitchens. I was a calm person. I was I was the diplomat. When really chaotic, terrible things would go on, I would intercede, especially with outside forces like police and things of that nature. And I was always diplomatic. I mean, we had our legal corps who would be very proactive, but I was the diplomat. I would go in and try to, instead of everyone overreacting, let's just can't we all get along? And part of that was my experience in the seminary, realizing that you can't go to war, and diplomacy is much better than going to war, right? And Lao Tzu says that diplomacy is the safer form of war. So it's war without violence, right? So anyway, or warfare without violence. And so sitting at this circle, and I tell this story because people keep saying, "Oh, tell this story about this and this story about that," meaning different rainbow stories. And someone says, "Well, what's another story? How did you get to be the Al Bob Griot diplomat, healer, et cetera, that you are here at the gatherings?" And, I said, "Well, the place where I really learned that you can't fight City Hall was at seminary." I said, "Seminary?" I said, "Yeah, I was going to be a priest. I was going to be a rocket scientist, for the Pope, because a good portion of NASA has nuns and priests in it. It's quite interesting that the Vatican owns a good chunk of NASA and I the international, the European Space Agency and the Russian space. The Vatican owns pretty much everybody's space agency, along with Lockheed. And I mean, they own parts of Lockheed and parts of Northrop Grumman. Anything of high tech, the Vatican owns, controls, has access to. And through my, cardinal godfather, I also had all of that. I mean, I was, being prepared to be in that world, right? Had a a father who was a bird colonel in Strategic Air Command, who was, involved in the development of the B-29 and about 20 other mass suicide, mass killing machines. So I said, well, and then I told the story about the seminary. And this girl goes, you're that Al? And I said, what Al? He goes, you went to, yes, yeah, that's the one. And I went to school there too. I said, what? She goes, well, when I went 30 years later, after you were there, it became a prep school rather than a seminary, and it had boys and girls. And I said, boy, I wish I was there when that was that. Anyway, she goes, you're a myth. You're a legend. They still talk about what you did with the bells. And she just went on and on. And everybody else in the circles got their mouth open. And this girl was quite an attractive girl. And she was 28-ish, right? And she was basically naked, because it's a rainbow gathering, everyone kind of experiments with going naked, pretty much 20% are always naked. Another 10 are kind of naked. Anyway, on 4th of July, maybe 50%, depending on how many people are doing acid or how stoned they are, is how many naked people there are. And so anyway, she was naked and she glammed on me like white on rice. 50-year-old guy like me, who's kind of chunky at this time. I was already 200 and something pounds, 280 maybe. And she was quite the svelte 28-year-old goddess of love. And she just, like I said, white on rice, and I was fine. Hey, my rainbow, and she had been floating around. And once she saw that I had a couple of nice camps, I had one in Com, I had one downtown, and I had my healing sanctuary up in the hills where there was nobody. It was quiet and nice, and all the animals from the forest who were scared were hiding with me. So we spent the next 3 weeks at the Rainbow, because that was seed camp. She had come to seed camp, and we just had to. It's really great to have a Rainbow girlfriend, and she was really smart. She had gone to college. She had gone to graduate school. She was a smart young lady, and she was really, and she had gotten her all her degrees in psychology. She was that far away from her little PhD in psychology, and she also studied physics. I mean, this girl was a smart girl, smart human being, smart woman, and she just loved the heck out of me, and we just had the best. She had a great sense of humor, and she was, would take. I saw her belt one guy who was just a road dog, and I mean, she was not short, or and she was well built, but she had worked out. She knew martial arts, and she just kicked him in the knee in a way the knee was not meant to. Knee is meant to go like this. She did it so his knee went that way, and that guy didn't do that ever again. And so anyway, she, and when she goes, what are you doing after this? I said, well, what are you doing? She goes, let's take a road trip, because I told her stories about my road trips. And so she had a pretty hefty, she had a car. I come there with some friends, and, she had a credit card, a couple of them. So we went across America, all over America, for about 2 months, right? And we went to every place you could imagine in America. We went to all the cities, the coasts, you name it, we went there. And I had a lot of friends to visit in Mexico and California and Florida and New Orleans, and Lester was still around in those days, so I went and visited him in New Orleans. And then we took a little road trip on a gray rabbit and a green tortoise, and she just loved the heck out of that trip. And so when we were heading towards Las Vegas, and we were out there in the desert someplace, and we stopped at a kind of diner / truck stop. I mean, it was not, it was a nice diner truck stop, and the diner was had probably been there before, because it's a very 50s diner, a nice diner, and kind of California-ish kind of with a Western motif. It had really good Mexican food, and it had really good everything food. And we had been on the road for a good, we had camped, we had hiked, we had, hadn't eaten that kind of food for at least a week. And we just stayed there for like 4 hours and had like 5 meals. Just, oh, wow, let's have this. Oh, wow, this is going to be good. And we'd like order one thing and then eat it together. And she really liked that. So, we we were there for about 4 hours, and we got there for breakfast, and we were, it was about 3:00, and so she says, I have to go powder my nose. So she went into the little girl's room, and I'm sitting there still chomping away, and I see this LTD drive up, right? And this is kind of after 9/11. So, and it was early on, and my parents were still alive. So it wasn't '08. Oh, I hadn't started working for the Desperate Lawyers. So it wasn't '06. It might've been somewhere between 2000 and was the Iraq war going? I'm not quite sure, but somewhere between 2002 and 2004. I'm not quite sure, somewhere in there. And so, 2000, 9/11 had occurred, right? So sitting there, and I'm like, we're in a booth, and the window is right here, so I'm seeing the whole parking lot there, and the whole highway. It's in a desert, so for miles either way, all I had to do is look that way and look that way, and that's the whole thing. Anyway, I'm sitting there, and I see this black LTD with like really dark windows. You can't see in at all, right? Not even the front, the front windshield. So it kind of pulls up, and it kind of, the parking is this way. They just kind of take 4 parking spots, right? And this guy gets out. He's got JCPenney suit, sunglasses. He's wearing sunglasses in a place that's like totally dark. And he's got a little thing in his ear, and his car has a 8-centimeter antenna. So that's like federal government radio, right? And, he gets out, another guy gets out, and opens up this door. And this woman gets out, tall, very attractive, very well built, probably, I couldn't really tell. She could be 48 to 60, but she was very trim, she not an ounce of fat on her. Anyway, so they get out of the car, they walk through the door of the thing, and there's people waiting to be seated, and they go right by the girl with the menus, and walk right by her, walk by this aisle of booths, come straight to me, and the guys stand around me, and the woman sits down. She looks at me, and she goes, Al, you're doing a great job. And I'm like, uh-oh, seems I might be in trouble here. Anyway, this lady is, part of a branch of some entity that is unknown of, that has more powerful than like the NSA, CIA, the new Homeland Security. She's like over them, right? And the girl I've been hanging out with is her daughter. It's like, whoa. So this girl's been using her credit card. So, of course, this woman knows every place that she's been. We've been in her car. Of course, there's TV cameras and microphones in her car, right? And so this woman has listened and heard everything. Because as soon as she says, you've done a great job, I go, oh, my God, this lady's heard. She probably has the girl bugged. And, like, while we're having sex, she's, like, watching it through her eyeballs. Anyway, so she goes, you have done what I haven't been able to do. And I said, what's that? To take my daughter and get herself appreciate who she is and all the great talents and gifts and all the great training and education that I've bestowed upon her. And she's at a point where she's ready to be responsible. You know, she's been the rebellious teenager. She's 28 years old. She's a rebellious teenager. But you've actually given her this perspective that is, I can see, because this woman, she's got everything in an algorithm. She's got her daughter wired. And she goes, so, I want her to finish her PhD. And so take this, but you've got another 2 months before she's, due back at, Harvard. And so just get it all out. Have more fun. And she pushes an envelope over to me, and I look at it, and it's not Benjamin's, it's the next size up. And there's 100 of those in there. That's quite a sizable amount of money. And she goes, and you'll get more if you get her to be what she's meant to be. You'll get a lot of more, and you'll get my gratitude. So a person who's this powerful to have their gratitude, I mean, you could ask them a favor or two. They might employ you in an interesting job or two. I'm going, and I'm kind of smiling, going, and she goes, it's all of that, but she's drilled a hole in my head too. And she goes, it's even more. And so I'm going, okay, sounds good to me. And so I have to go. She's about to leave the woman's room. And so she gets up. The guys are surrounding her. They get in the car. They're gone before the thing. And I put that little envelope in my pocket. And the sweetie comes out. And she sits down. And she's smiling. And she kind of gets this look like this. And she goes, so what'd you think of my mother? I said, so, she was here. She goes, well, she's got everything about me wired. There's no way that I can ever have a moment, all the time we had sex, even at the gathering. Oh, yeah, of course. She probably had a keyhole satellite. She controls everything. And so I said, so, I'm enthralled and in love with you because of your brilliance and everything about you, and that's your mom. I mean, I could see you in her. Of course, she's bred you for who you're going to be, right? And I was just the little catalyst that has helped you kind of realize that instead of fighting, because I kept, at the gathering, all I did was be Mr. Diplomat and Mr. Fix-It too, meaning especially at, and I brought her to every place that I did stuff at that gathering. I took her to the meetings, did all that. And that was her first rainbow gathering. So anyway, and put her in kitchens. So I said, so I'm going to leave you here because this is a great kitchen. And, I'll either be a calm or I'll be here or be there, and when dinner is, you serve dinner, and then after dinner, I'll come back to your kitchen and then we'll go play. And so she spent all day chopping this and doing that and becoming part of a community of a kitchen. And, I remember that first kitchen I dropped her off at, and when I went to get her after the main meal and we went to play, she just, said, I'm just so hot for you. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you just kind of put me in a place that was the most amazing thing I ever did. It was no longer about me. It was about the team. It was about everybody. It was like everything. We were all doing our best. It was like unbelievable. I never experienced, all of this. It was no longer, I'm the best. I'm the smartest. I'm the this. No, I was just chopping carrots. I was just making I learned how to make tofu. She just went on and on and on. The whole time we were making love, she just went on and on about cutting carrots and making tofu, which just got her hotter and hotter. And, you have to realize 28, I'm 50 something, so it's 50, somewhere between 52 and 54, she's 28. And, and I was a good 120 pounds overweight, so I was like 280, didn't even, no, I was her man. I was her sweetie, her pumpkin, I was, she, every minute she had a different nickname for me. anyway, so we're talking about her mom and her life, and I said, so we got a whole nother. What do you want to do? She said, well, let's go to. She goes, so I'm sure your. And so I said, so how do you know your mom was here? She goes, I can feel her. So she's been genetically engineered to have. So I'm intuitive. This girl had she was like the old crone on steroids and 28 years old. And, PhDs in everything from astrophysics to, psychology. Anyway, and she studied at, the Sorbonne. She'd studied at Oxford. She had been at the Tavistock Institute. She was like, so she goes, yeah, let's have a good time. So we went to Las Vegas. We got the best room because her credit card was unlimited, right? And, we had those 2 months were pretty good. Actually, we went to Mexico, we went to the Baja, we went to Jamaica. Where else did we go? We went to Toronto. I mean, she had credit card, first class, everything. It was, once her mom was there and she swept me, this fatty of the next size above a Benjamin, and the girl had unlimited resources. One of her credit cards, she had all platinum cards and one black card, which was like you could buy a house with that or anything with that. You wanted to buy a 747, not a problem. You got a black card. And that's when, what lesson I got from that was that there is no reality. That was just like, forget about it. So when that little bit of the Max Igon I played earlier on the show, it's like there are people who said, oh, you have to watch this. This guy's so racist, so that he's telling people should die, blah, blah, blah. No, they were projecting what they saw in this thing. Now, yes, he said all those things, but the way he said it, yes, it was in the context of what my friends got so upset about. But I knew that about Max from the start. But I look at Max, not that little square of what he said right here, but I look at this, right? What he's done and how he's stepped up to it. And so I have a lot of experience. And I knew, they said, if you don't get the jab, if I didn't get the, vaccine, I wasn't going to be able to get health care. The guy at the HMO said, don't do this, well, you're off the list, which means I'd have to come back here or do something where I'd have to like re-engineer what I had already have everything nice and everything was flow. So basically to be in the flow, be at the ease, sure, go ahead. I don't care. And again, when you're my age, when you are in the ease, I felt it go in me. And basically, as I felt it go in me, I realized there was none of the nasty, nasty stuff that people say there is in there, right? Because it, to me, felt, from my point of view, I saw it as, distilled water, the kind of, if you were going to go to placebo, and that's kind of what I felt it was, a placebo. Because a certain percentage of that vaccine was a placebo. Because whatever percentage that is of the nasty stuff, they don't give it to everyone because they don't want everyone to get that. They want a certain percentage of people to get that. And so when the first shot I got, I had no side effects, no nothing. And when I went into my state and looked at it, it seemed like a placebo. So first one's a placebo, second one's a placebo, right? I got my little card. And from this point on, more than 80% of the first world, the industrial white world, has been inoculated. Less than 2% of the third world has been inoculated, right? And so if anyone wants me to get anything else, I'm basically going to say, listen, ethically, it's inappropriate if I have gotten 2 shots and you say this vaccine is so great that it'll keep me, so I get it. It'll, I won't die, not a problem, right? But until you vaccinate the rest of the world, ethically, it's inappropriate. And Scientifically, it's inappropriate because if you're worried about variants and things to mutate, well, if you want to stop it, you better start inoculating the third and second world before you keep giving boosters to the first world. So that's and I've already talked to people within the hierarchy of all of this. And they said, well, that's, that would, you got your little card, you already got your inoculation passport, and when you say that, you can give that as a good reason why. And pretty much, especially with the people stepping up to be against this, that is like the voice of reason, right? So that's my diplomatic way of doing things, right? So, and that's kind of what I brought to that young lady was the realization she didn't have to be she has so much to offer and so much that has been given her. So with great gifts comes responsibility. So she has the opportunity to step into a position of power that she can be a good person. She can do her best. And I could see in her mother, who was like a total Nazi, she had a part of her that was doing her best, that she was serving love's co-creation. And her daughter was a better version of her. So she gets into that scene. And that's why I've worked for people like that woman. And that's why that woman frigging knew me like a frigging book, because I got quite the pedigree, right? And now, if you go to check me out, I don't exist, because that's a true pedigree when you don't exist, Now, you look at certain things that I've been involved with, I'm like Forrest Gump, the picture, of all the people involved in that. Look, there's Al. Oh, there's Al D.U.N. Oh, there's Al here. There's Al there. There's Al negotiating with the aliens. It's like, that's me, right? Now, I tell you stories that give you insight to this, but not to glorify it or to titillate, right? People, tell us stories about monsters and this. And I've told you, the biggest monster story I've told you is when I was a fireman and we would go clean up the messes of people who lived in the retirement. It wasn't a gated community or a retirement village. It was a mobile home lodge of retired people. That's all they could afford. And people ate their guns or drank Clorox. The fire department, the two things in the almost 3 years that I was a member of this fire department, we never put out a fire. We trained to, and we put out fires of abandoned buildings that we trained on. But what we mostly did was respond to really horrific car crashes that were like a war zone, and these suicides in the trailer park. That's all, because in our little section that our house was in, that's the two things that went on. So we were really good at responding to both. Right? We went to one fire. It was a farm that was a chicken farm, and they had a big natural gas, gigantic natural gas tank, like industrial size. And the chicken, and this chicken park, each of the chicken houses had like 10,000 chickens. The whole thing had maybe 100,000, and it was egg laying. Not, they're turning them into KFC. They were chickens that laid eggs. And the fire got loose in one of the house, and we were going up to put it out. Oh, well, we're going to fight a fire. We're going to do all the things we had to train. And we were a quarter mile going up this hill, and the fire blew up that natural gas tank. And it was like a nuclear explosion. It rocked the 3 counties. And we were a quarter mile away. And it actually stopped the diesel engine. And because the glass in our fire, we had a pretty new fire truck. The glass was basically kind of bulletproof, right? And so the truck kind of got shocked, and the engine stopped, and the truck was like knocked sideways. But it didn't blow us over. It didn't really hurt the truck. What we did was turned it off, lift up the hood, and we stayed in the truck because it blew up the whole farm, and chunks of it were raining down on everything. And but the explosion blew out the big fire. Right, there were little chunks here and there that were on fire that we took out with fire extinguishers. But it took us about a half. We had to the vehicle was dead. We had to we unconnected the batteries from the truck and then reconnected them, which rebooted everything. The truck pretty much was one big computer, and started back. Right? So that was the only fire we ever went to, right? But the biggest monster story was cleaning up after the dead people who ate guns. People who were in the bathtub and slit the wrists, not so much. People who took drugs and OD'd, not so much. But people who blew their brains out. And so there was one where, and there was this one because our house was here and the State Highway Patrol guys, lodge was over here, and we knew them really well. We worked, a lot of the car crashes, they were there. We knew all the people. There were these 2 sergeants, 2 lieutenants, and a captain that we knew very well. Because the other guys, the lower rank guys, didn't mix well. They weren't, they had this attitude, and they were kind of freaked out that the fire department that we were like 89%. The captain was a woman, lieutenant was a woman, and the rest, there was me, 2 teenage boys, and an old guy, who's old, like 60, and he had been a volunteer there for a long time, and he just, he was the historian of that house, and and if you ever kind of wanted to know something about this or that, he was very good, and he had been a doctor, so he was, and he didn't really respond to things that much. He was more the teacher, historian, the grandpa Smurf, and but the younger Highway Patrol guys, they had attitudes, and but the chief, the captain of that house of the State Highway Patrol, the 2 lieutenants, and the sergeants were tight. So there was this one sergeant. He had training in conflict resolution and suicide and all that kind of stuff. He was there. So whenever those kind of things, he would be the guy who showed up. He usually got there first, and he would call us, right? And we'd show up. Anyway, when we showed up to this place, the guy was waiting outside, and he's like, actually has a bottle of booze, and he's like hitting it on pretty regularly and smoking a cigarette. I know I knew he smoked, and I knew he drank, but he never did that on duty. He didn't smoke on duty. He didn't drink on duty, but he had a bottle in his car, and he is drinking and smoking, and he's obviously upset. And this guy was a cool cucumber, really smart, really well educated, really well trained in all of this, and in the paranormal too. I knew him a good 2 years, and he was one of the guys I would talk to, and because he found out that I was part of all these mystery schools and esoteric entities, and anyway, and he went to my boss, and my boss told him all about me, and so he was like really interested in me, and we hang out, right? We go. He was a hunter, and I like going into the woods, and he was also a fisherman, so we wouldn't hunt that much because I don't like the smell of guns he was quite impressed with that I could still shoot, in that time, and I was 88, so I was 38 in 88. Yeah, I was 38. And so I could still see well enough, and I could, my net was still pretty well rounded to being able to shoot. And so, and I'd wear the earmuffs, and I'd wear the yellow goggles, and I would put, a swimmer's nose clamp on my nose. And he goes, "What are you doing putting that?" And the first time we went to the range, put the earmuffs on, the yellow glasses, and the thing on my nose. And he goes, what's that for? And I said, I can't. I really don't like the smell of cordite. And in the little thing that sets the explosion of the shell off is cordite. So when you pull the trigger and it hits that, and then boom, the bullet goes off in the casing, and the bullet shoots out the thing. That's cordite. And I just can't stand the smell of it. So anyway, we went to the range, and I kind of didn't put it in the bullseye, same place every time, but I got a very nice grouping, And so he took me on the range that they have these things that pop out at you, and whether you're going to shoot the little girl or the guy with the gun. I did very well on that. So he said, you were well trained. I said, oh yeah, the Hoaglands trained me really well. He said, you're not talking about the guy who started the NRA. I said, well, not the guy, but the grandchildren of that guy. Yep. So anyway, that Sarge was, he and I were really tight, right? And so when I saw him outside the trailer, like I said to my captain, I said, we should tell everyone to stand down, and you and I should go check this out. And so we did. And we said, so Sarge, what's up? He goes, he couldn't even get, he says, don't walk in. Just, the doors, push the door open and just glance in there, and then come and talk to me, and we'll figure out what we're going to do. And so, we did what he said. And I have a mirror for situations like this. I said, Cap, we'll just stand back here. We won't even poke our heads in. And we put a mirror in there, and there was a body out on the floor, and the head was gone and like splattered across the wall and the ceiling, and it was a just gush of blood from the body into the kitchen. Just the whole 8 gallons or whatever we are is just a lake of it, right? And in the lazy boy is the guy, and he's got this face that is like doing this, turning into many different, a demon, the head blowing apart, the guy's real head, and it's just flittering like this, and he's screeching, right? And he's not making any sound, but the screech, when we took the mirror and looked at him, the screech was like in our head. When we took it away, you couldn't hear it. So we were like, okay. And because I don't think we should go in there. Have you seen anything like that with all that you've seen? Have you seen anything like that? I said, well, kind of, but yes, you're right. We shouldn't go in there. And he goes, so how do we deal with this? And I said, our pump has a foam vehicle. I mean, we could pump 2,500 gallons of foam from a window. From that kitchen window where that hallway is, that's all covered with blood, we could fill this whole trailer up with foam. And I would say the chemical nature of that foam and the density of that foam would be enough to knock down the energetics of what's going on, that we could deal with it. And he goes, well, it's worth a try. So we pulled the truck over there. We had, 3,000 gallons in the pump truck. We didn't have to hook it up to anything. We, hit the few buttons to turn it from water, and we got the pipe and the nozzle that punches out the foam. And we just broke that window, stuck the hose in there, and just filled that whole thing up with foam. Emptied the fire truck, and then sent the fire truck down the road to where there was a river, and because that whole area is Finger Lakes and rivers, and filled the truck back up, and we had a whole nother 3,000 gallons of foam to pump in it if we had to, or just pump water in it and wash it all out, So you know, we did that, and first we pumped maybe 700. We instead of pumping, we put a nozzle on it and hit the inside of the trailer from the window with a high pressure 2-inch line that hosed all the foam out the doors, and we broke. We opened up. There are two other doors. We opened them up, and we broke the windows, so the foam and everything would just drool out of the thing. And when we did that, the energetics, the energy was still beyond creepy, but the demonic entity that was dangerous was gone, right? And so I, in my little medical bag, that was my bag of tricks, in the, whatchamacallit, the ambulance of our company was, a rolling emergency room. We had everything that an emergency room has. But I had a little bag of tricks in it, and in shamanic or medicine man, any indigenous person who is a healer, they have what they call their toolbox, and I just called it my bag of tricks. And one of the things, I had different types of sage, right? So, I had my little I had an actual blowtorch, and got one burning pretty good, threw it in there, and did a few little prayers, and it knocked it down even more. And then we basically just took a body bag, rolled the body into that, and we got the ME. We took the body out and put it on a gurney that the ME could put into his truck. I didn't want that thing in the in our ambulance or our fire truck, but the ME transports lots of dead bodies, and that guy, I knew that ME really good, and the staff, they had seen, I don't know, as weird as that, but pretty weird shit. So they understood protection, so they had it taken care of, and they burnt the body immediately, right? They cremated it immediately because they went in and took a look at everything. And even though we foamed it out, washed it out, and I smudged it out, the energy was still there. And there were two ME guys who were, understood. One was definitely, he was an Algonquin, so the other guy was a Mohawk, so they understood all of this. And that's why they had that job, because they understood that. They were shamanic folk. So anyway, that was the most monstrous thing. And I said, basically, before we even foamed it out, before I smudged it out, part of I had other supplies in the ambulance, and one was, I had a case of salt, right? Basically, I had what is known as the salt that rabbis use. How Catholics have holy water, and I had holy water too. And so I put a circle of salt around that, and I left a gateway, a one-way gateway for that entity to leave, right? And where there was a back door off of that, living room, we opened up all the doors. There was a door at each of the bedrooms and a door at the back side of the living room, and there's a front door that kind of went into the kitchen and eating area and the living area. So we opened up all the doors, smashed the windows, but first I put salt all the way around and left right where that back door off the living room they could. But I still, while the creature was really in there full power, I made a total circle of salt. And where the front door was, that we closed after we opened it and looked at, with a mirror. And that's another way to keep a spirit, and the mirrors I had were these like dollar store plastic mirrors, right? And they were like the kind you're used to, like, you hold in your hand. And once I looked at it, I just threw it into I didn't take it back with me. I kind of threw it into the trailer. And so that was, the scariest monster I saw. But even that monster, by not being scared of it, and I said that to my Sarge friend, I said, before we do this, we have to say a prayer together, and we have to put a prayer of protection and a prayer of realization of conscious intent that we're not scared of this. Because the scary thing would be the worst thing for us, right? I'm going to do all this protection stuff, and, you're going to not be scared of it, right? So he did. He said, okay. I said, so actually, Sarge, you need to kind of break that, that bottle of throw that bottle of alcohol through, we're going to break all the windows. When we do that, you're going to throw that bottle through one of those things so the bottle goes into there. And you're going to take your pack of cigarettes, and you're going to take one cigarette, and you're going to bless it and throw it through the hole. And you're going to bless each cigarette after that and throw it into because tobacco is a sacred tool. And if you bless it and put a prayer of forgiveness and empathy and no fear, it'll protect you. So he does, right? So throws the first thing we did after I put the circle of salt, he throws the bottle into there. That breaks the first window. And that's the window that we put the hose in to with the foam. And then we, wash it. And then I, lit up one of my smudge sticks and really got it going good and threw it in there and let the smudge before we did the foam. And then we, put the foam in, right? And there's a big tank of water, and then there's this other little tank that the chemicals are in there that make the foam. And so I took one of my bottles of holy water and put it into that. So the foam that got sprayed and filled the whole trailer up, had a whole bottle of holy water in it. And so we then, made a gateway for the, at the back door of the living room, and we put some Sitchins, and I drew them on. I found a couple of rocks, and I drew them on the rocks so that whatever spirit came out could only go into a space that wouldn't be in our space, in this universe, and go into another universe, into a place where it's supposed to go, right? And because that demon was lost, you could tell that demon was like, and that was a demon that was in the guy that caused him to kill himself. And so, salt of the earth, son of a man, crystal, mm-hmm. So, that was, that's when people want to hear a scary monster story, that's the one I tell, right? Because that is, those kind of monsters are with us all the time. And the real essence of them is they really have no power over it as long as you're not scared, right? As long as fear isn't thing, as long as it doesn't take you down the path of self-loathing where you want to punish yourself, right? And that's what that guy wanted to do. He couldn't take it anymore, so he ate his gun, right? And by doing that, it gave the power to that demon. He couldn't get out of that trailer. He was stuck, and that's why the demon was screaming, because he couldn't. He thought by doing this to this guy, he would be unleashed, but he couldn't, right? Demon hadn't really read the handbook too well. And then the fact that I had all the right tools, and my captain and my lieutenant and Sarge understood this. We had talked about this a lot because we had responded to lots of suicides, a lot of people eating their guns, and you could feel that energy, but it never was like this, right? And then when we did all the right stuff, and I was schooled as a Catholic priest, even though I got thrown out of, I left the seminary, didn't mean, I had spent, when that nun murdered me in first grade, I spent almost 3 years with the Marinols, and those guys knew that, there were a number of guys there who were theologians and exorcists, and that kind of, so they kind of gave me every one of those 40 people in that sanctuary left me with a cornucopia of knowledge and experience. And that's why I'm your Sensei Al-Ba. That's why I'm your griot. Yep. Isn't super, isn't salt. Salt and all of these things are metaphors. They're tools. That's all they are, tools. Everything's a tool. Tool can be a tool or it can be a weapon. Hammer can hit in nails or whack you upside the head, And everything is like that. So you can either use it as a tool, and it's the intent that is really the important thing, and the conscious awareness of what you're doing. So, that is a major story that I'm communicating to you, is the conscious intent. And that from here on in, Max, when I started out with this thing, and someone wanted me to go after Max. No, because yes, he said a few things in there that were, because he was coming from, these guys are, he was talking about, what I call Mr. Baloney Loney, that's been around since, before Babylon, the fall of all these empires, fall of Lemuria, fall of Atlantis, fall of every Phoenicia, all of the things before Babylon, which came before Egypt, and which came before Greece, which came before Rome, which came before Spain, which came before, they're all the same, they're all in the same lineage. They all make the same mistake. Love, co-creation is the only thing that is real. Everything else is illusion. And so is that demon, illusion, right? Now, if you give it power over yourself, well, that's a problem. The thing is not to do that. Well, I think, look at that. There's all twos. 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 22 seconds. So I think it's time to go. I think what time is it? It's almost 10 o'clock. Yep, I'm going to say I love you guys. I'll speak to you in the morning. I have things to do earlier in the morning, so I probably won't speak to you probably till the afternoon. Right? So, but as long as I can, have real access to the internet, I will do this. And it might be for a week or two until it gets warm. I'm not going back to the deep green until it's warm. So, okay. Love you guys. Stay well. Be good. I'm back. So let's say a little prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Thy will be done as is on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, as it was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. See, kind of gives you the heads up of what's going on. That prayer is one, and it's not just a Roman Catholic prayer. It's a universal prayer that has been around 1 billion years. So that's why I use it. Okay. I just want to leave that little prayer of protection and safety, and that remember, don't believe a word I say, and this is just for entertainment's sake. And remember, if you want to get a hold of me, that's the dudeawake42@gmail, dudeawake42@gmail. If you want to put something in my PayPal, I would truly love it. Still my birthday month, but my birthday, I celebrate 364 days of the year, and that one day I celebrate my love for my mother, but I love her pre-65. But that's back in the day when she was still corporeal, I used to bring her a bottle of booze and 2 dozen roses, and I would sit there and we would play gin rummy until she fell asleep. That's what I would do on my birthday. So I hope you enjoyed the night. Night. Love is the power, gang. Okay.